Okay. This should be fun. With my... One day, people will come.
Okay, I had my microphone turned off.
Like, we should, like, start... We should post about these, like, a week in advance so people can plan their schedules around
No, I should.
eventually.
This will actually end up getting archived to YouTube, by the way, so it does that often.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, do you want to make a post on Tumblr saying we're currently live?
Yeah, I was about to do that.
Yes, please. Thank you. Prepare yourself for the crushing disappointment of no one coming.
Can I remind you again, this is getting recorded. Oh, wait. Weird. Okay. Showing 7 people when you look at the thing. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I posted that. Try this over here just to verify because it does see if this is working. It's not. Interesting. Yeah, it's showing 8 people outside of chat.
So, how do they get in? You might want to remind them.
Yeah, this is it. Let's see. Oh, okay, we do have somebody there.
In silence. Hello, everybody.
Oh, I need to set it over so I can actually see the Q&A. Okay. Oh, right. One of the viewers is actually the alt. I just opened this up and closed it. Oh, no, wait, that's not right. There is actually somebody there. Okay.
Silence.
Okay. Yeah, so you should have an option to enter a question. I'm gonna bring it back up in front of me so I can see it again and walk through the steps. But there should be a bar on the right side that will allow you to actually. Yeah, it's there. You can ask questions. For whatever reason, we can't get a chat box working right now. We might have to run an IRC channel in the future to get a real time chat going.
There is a chat, group chat.
No, group chat's only visible to the two of us.
Oh,
Group chat, for whatever reason, is limited to people who actually have broadcast access. So there isn't an open chat that anybody can get into. I'm not sure if there is one, then somebody can tell me where it is, and that would be good to know. But
we are so lame.
thanks. So yeah, if you've got questions, feel free. You should have an Ask a New Question button in the lower right-hand corner once you're connected. If you don't, then I'm going to start digging through the inbox probably for stuff that's been left untouched there.
All the anonymous questions to which we don't know whose answers they are.
Yeah, that'll make things interesting. This, yeah, there we go. You can actually see the questions.
And if anyone wants to know, a pacifist does not automatically equal a good person.
Yeah, that is definitely one that's been kicking around. We had a question. Actually, I'll just bring this up on the other screen so you can see it. We had a question from somebody who was. It's been moved to drafts. Okay. We have this very well in hand.
Oh, yeah.
I think you moved that to drafts.
Oh, did I? Yes.
Yeah, you did. No, you didn't. It's still here somewhere.
It's hiding.
That is probably true. It goes down. Oh yeah, there it was. Somebody was asking, can a staunch pacifist also be a highly cunning? Can a lost the thing?
Yeah. I'm back, though.
Okay.
We apologize for our internet. It is flaky.
Yep. To put it mildly.
Can a staunch pacifist also be highly manipulative and cunning? The answer to that is, do you mean a diplomat?
Or a spy. Or
Or
anyone else
spy?
who doesn't want to engage in violence. You want to just post the questions to the document you've got open?
Sure.
Copy it over and then
Yes.
start working through some of these.
If anyone wants to say, make it bigger, I will.
Should probably.
Okay.
Can I actually see this list, or is that no? That's just a anonymous thing. Oh, fair warning to everybody that's there. This is us sort of teething through this. So
Yeah.
we'll get this in hand as we go, but some of this is going to be awkward first time out.
We have no idea what we're doing. Yay!
No, not much of an idea. Let's.
Can. Anonymous asks, can a staunch pacifist be highly cunning and manipulative? Can they? The answer is yes. Unironically, the problem with major media is that pacifism often gets conflated into the idea that you are a good person. That avoiding violence is primarily about not wanting to see people get hurt. And a lot of times that's actually true, but not totally. A pacifist is an it's an outlook, it's a philosophical outlook that says violence causes more violence, and that violence creates certain kinds of actions to which we respond. And sometimes you don't want to deal with those ever for any reason. So it's not necessarily a personality type so much as it's what you choose to believe. And you can be as just as much a screwed up individual after that because people are people. And to say, well, they must always be a Gandhi, failing to realize that Gandhi himself wasn't really that great of a person, it undercuts you as a writer. To say my character doesn't engage in violence does not automatically equal that they mean that they are a good person. And that's okay.
For reference here, the thing with Gandhi is that he was very much a staunch nationalist, and the his avoiding violence, as much as philosophical, was also very pragmatic. It was about if you simply respond with violence, you won't get a favorable response, a favorable result. So, in his case, it's not necessarily about taking the moral high ground. It was simply about looking for something that would actually work and actually achieve his goals. And violence would not do that. But the objective there was to make the occupation of India, British colonial India, too unfavorable, too unpalatable to the British. And the way to do that was not through arms insurrection as he saw it. So when I say not really a great person, that's what we mean. It's not that he was approaching this just simply from a moral view. It was he was approaching this from a trying to figure out a way to make this work.
Well, and Gandhi himself was highly cunning and manipulative.
Oh
He
yeah,
was manipulating on the world stage, trying to make it look like the British were unfairly occupying India. And if they responded with violence, the British would crack down harder and would lead to international pressure siding with the British rather than with the people of India. And so, in large part, that lack of violent response was, in the same way Martin Luther King did, to ensure that public opinion and international pressure sided with his people as opposed to the occupying force, which is very unusual, in fact, for the time period.
yeah,
His goal was ultimately to make the people of India look like the civilized ones in a period of colonialism where everything was about saying that the people, the colonial people that were under the reign of their regime, were uncivilized, savage animals that needed the white man to come and raise them up. And
yeah. So the entire point was to demonstrate how false that was. I'm broadcasting. Can't tell because with mine, I get to see when you're broadcasting. I actually see your audio pip go up. With
mm,
mine, I can't. So I was left to sort of, am I broadcasting? Am I audible? But I think I
yeah,
okay. Cool.
the question is, can anyone else get in here?
We've got 4 viewers right now.
Okay, well,
Yeah, no, I'm watching the. You can see it in the lower right corner. Oh, you can't because you've got it turned off.
no, I can't.
Yeah, I can see in the lower right corner because I've got broadcast controls. We've got 3 right now. It's waffling up and down a little bit. So yeah, there are people there. Um, if you're trying to figure out how to put a question through, you might have to go to the right. Go to the left side of the screen with your mouse and see if it pops up a little option bar. It'll include a Q and A with a little Q&A comment box. That'll open up a bar on the right side of the screen, which will give you the option to click and ask any question. I think in the future, we're probably going, when we do this in the future, we're probably going to put some pre-screened questions through,
Mm.
just so that we've got stuff to work from the beginning, because it's a little easier to run the questions through that box. It might also create a sock puppet account just for the purposes of populating the list to begin with from stuff from the inbox. But
Mm.
anyway, that's just information for anybody who's curious about that.
So the answer to the question of can a staunch pacifist be highly cunning and manipulative? Yes, a staunch pacifist can also be a villain, just as much as they can be a hero. Again, it's just an ideological outlook.
The other thing going through here is you can have somebody who's a pacifist. It's just as a practical. Oh, there
Hmm.
we go. We do have a question. You can have somebody. Okay, yeah, we will get to that in a minute. Who's a staunch pacifist, not because they have any philosophical aversion to violence, but simply because they see it as pragmatically inconvenient. For example, a spy, they won't resort to violence because that actually makes their job harder and will drag them into a situation where then they have to get around the violence, just making more problems for themselves. And that's not helping anybody.
So the question is in a zombie apocalypse, what weapon would you choose, Stark? What weapon would you choose in a zombie apocalypse?
I like that one. Uh, ouch. I tell you what, I won't use. Would not use a chainsaw or flamethrower. Those are both really bad options right up front because the flamethrower, you just all you're doing is creating flaming zombies, and the chainsaw, those won't actually work on people. They're designed to deal with stuff that does not gunk up the works and jam. Those are the two popular ones that just, I'm sorry, those don't work. Um,
I think it's important to remember with zombies, the type of zombie you're dealing with, whether or not they're dead. Are they like raw, raw, raw?
oh yeah, no, you're taking
Just the shamblers, or do they run? How do they interact with their environment? How do they uh, track their prey? I guess. Like, are all their senses dead? Are they working through sound or other kinds of things? Is this a Resident Evil type situation? Like, the kind of zombie apocalypse that you could have are so numerous that it's really hard to pick without knowing what kind of zombie. Um, for me, shamblers, I prefer not to go into hand to hand with them ever. Uh, but if necessary, I like weapons that are quieter because if you take something like a gun, like which we saw in the Walking Dead comics, you fire off the gun, massive sound, it attracts everything.
well,
So
that's
suddenly you're dealing with 10, 20, 50 zombies when you could be dealing with one.
yeah. Well, and then this other side of that is with Walking Dead, like with the comics specifically, anyway. You're looking at zombies that hunt by sound, and then also zombies that hunt by scent. So yeah, like if you're dealing with a handful, I think my first choice actually would be frag 12 shells for a shotgun, simply because if it's undead, you need as much tissue disruption as you possibly can get. And yeah, packing a portable hand grenade into a 12 gauge shotgun seems like a good option, but it really depends on your flavor of zombie.
And where you are and what you need.
Yeah,
Um, I actually tend to think of zombies more like road hazards.
yeah,
um, where you're dealing with characters, they're not really the biggest thing that you fight because fighting zombies, like the way zombies get handled in media and lore and just general, is that their consumerism. It's an inevitable push. You can never defeat all the zombies. You can never kill all the zombies. You can never fight all the zombies. And that fighting the zombies itself is, well,
feudal.
feudal. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the ultimate feudalism.
yeah, yeah.
But I like tricking the zombies. That's my favorite weapon for dealing with the zombies is utilizing your brain, like using an alarm clock to trick them into going into other rooms, um, getting them to walk off a cliff. Um,
Yes, finally, those lemming videos actually have a purpose.
Yes. Zombies ultimately they are like lemmings. If they don't have upper higher brain function and they aren't able to process their environment, then they're pretty much driven purely on an instinctual level and you can actually use that against them. That's what I think personally, but that's me.
Yeah,
I choose my brain.
yeah. Let's see. The other one, like when you've got living zombies, like it's an actual person that's just been driven into a homicidal frenzy, then you're actually looking back at the same stuff you'd use to deal with crowds. Um, and firearms start to become a real option. Trying to think what else, but that's the big one. So,
So
and that'd be something like 28 days later, where you really need to keep them at range. That's also a time where you can start looking at stuff like incendiary units, like flamers, because again, you just need to keep contaminants under control.
well,
That's
it's
a
a
different kind of zombie.
and there's the real question of how the disease actually gets transmitted. Is it through bites or is it through bodily fluids or do they spit
Oh
or
god,
do they stab you with tentacles? I don't know. Like Resident Evil has me like going, I don't think those are zombies anymore,
they're really not. They're really really not. But you know,
but it's kind of exciting. Think about.
they get a lot of fun stuff there. Again, it's and I'm in the same way. I look at zombies in most contexts. I look at zombies as sort of environmental hazard. It's not when you're writing a story about zombies, they're not really the function of the story. The function of the story is going to be how the characters, how your human characters, your non-converted characters are interacting with each other. And the consumerism thing, which I think that's yeah, that comes from Day of the Dead, the original. I can't remember. I think it's Romero. Yeah, the original Romero film, where he was specifically doing a play on consumerism run amok. It's also in the Zack Snyder film to a certain degree, but it's not quite as clearly fleshed out there. And you can, sorry, you can look at zombies and look at pop culture, or look at popular culture, and sort of desire to throw yourself at something. And you
The
just set them
mind.
out there, and then you put your characters around and have them interact with each other when you're putting this additional pressure on them. Um, so it's an environmental hazard. It's also a hazard that keeps your characters contained for the purposes of them interacting. And that's something you actually will see if you go through the Walking Dead comics. Neither of us have watched the TV series. I looked at it briefly, and honestly, with the comic, it was something I gave up after about 6 or 7 years because it just gets so depressing. Um, the comic just doesn't stop; it keeps going, and things keep getting worse. And I was like, well, I can do without this much depression. So,
Yeah.
but it is a really important thing to grasp with when you're writing zombies.
Well, zombies are primarily, unless you're actually trying to shift genres, it's their survival horror. They fall into the same category as you being trapped in with a snowstorm. Um, your character with a broken leg at the bottom of a shaft or a ravine, trying to figure out how to survive. Um, Something very unfortunate. It's it's not really dystopic, and the dystopia, if there is dystopia, it comes from uh, the people around them.
Yeah, but also you can get the you can also get into a post-apocalyptic genre with them, where it's you have this vast swaths of there's nothing out there, and the zombies are just a convenient vector to do that.
Which feeds back into the survival horror. How do you get
Yeah,
food? How do you get toilet paper? How do you get what you need to survive? Well, getting around these things that will turn you into them. You know,
yeah.
sort of like everything is frozen
Well, yeah,
except the zombies.
yeah. Well, there is an overlap between the post-apocalypse genre and I think the survival genre.
Hmm.
It's an area I'm not really well versed in where those two overlap, but it's there. And so when you're looking at zombies simply as a vector to say, well, there's nothing out there except for these things, they're a persistent threat, it's not that different from you're saying there's nothing out there except for raiders, or there's nothing out there except for the sand and dehydration. It's just a slightly different way of addressing the scene. That's not at all the question that was being asked, but there you go.
Well, I think zombies are really fun in that sort of way. If you want to actually look at because we get so many questions on the blog about instincts, and you want to talk about a creature that behaves purely on instinct, you're looking at a zombie. They're gonna be basically have a very set parameters for how they interact with their environment, what they do, what they're looking for, and then how they behave. And it's really a question of how do you work around that? Because the zombie ultimately, unless it's evolving, isn't going to change. And it's more a question of it's always dangerous, and which risk is it this time that you're going to come away with getting bit? And I think what I always liked about them was that you lose people
Yeah,
consistently. Every time you go out, it's a risk of not just is someone going to die, but who is going to die. And that's part of what makes zombies so interesting because they take you and they add more to your number and or add more add to their number.
yeah,
So everyone you lose makes them stronger, and then you have the jump scares and everything else that comes with that, and seeing a face of your friend running at you in the crowd, ready to eat you.
yeah,
And so it's that terror of seeing of losing everything and then losing more after that, which makes the question of which weapon. It's hard to say because what comes from zombies mostly is that crushing despair of I can't survive, or how am I going to survive, or how am I going to make it, or how long until I become like them,
yeah.
which is interesting. I like crowbars.
Yeah, that's an option. Um, yeah, crowbar is a legitimate option.
Crack them right across the head. Whack.
I'd like something with a little bit more range than that, but work with what you got. Actually, ironically, one of the few times I would say something like a pitchfork isn't a bad option, just to be able to keep things moving.
Shovels are good.
Yeah, that's true. That's another good one.
Farming tools. Um, Pikes, actually, if you can use them indoors, figure out how to use them indoors. I always like the ones where they trap them with where they set up traps for them.
Yeah.
Um, Pit traps, barbed wire.
Just a quick reminder: you can ask questions. There should be a bar on the right side of the screen with a box at the bottom. And thank you for Kelly for saying, yeah, that's. I did see you there, so thank you on that.
Yeah. Well, but the crowbar, it's pretty. It's a simple weapon. It's easy to use. You just swing it, and it's made of iron. Tire irons, similarly. Um,
I usually steel actually, but yeah, well, tire irons I think are those crank wrenches. Anything other,
Steel.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Um,
don't
uh,
pursue.
Again, with zombies, it's simply a matter of a tool, any self defense tool, anything you can find in your environment that'll help you destroy their brain.
Yeah.
Um, you can make a flamethrower from most indoor
Well, yeah. The problem with the flamethrower is just
umpos.
that if you're setting something that's on fire, it's already dead. All you're doing is cooking the meat, and if it's somehow supernaturally reanimated, then that's no guarantee that it's not going to keep coming at you. It's also no guarantee that it's not going to simply set you on fire while it's burning. That's a slight problem, or set other things on fire.
Yes.
All right, that's one fantasy I keep. So stop it.
But the flamethrowers are so cool.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
We will move on.
Okay, I'll mark that one as done.
So, does anyone else have any questions?
Otherwise, I'm probably going to take a couple of the one-offs that I've got from the inbox. Let's see. these will actually get answered tomorrow, but it's we've got one. How many times do you have?
Oh,
Oh, we
uh,
got one.
we have from Christina Rader. How does muscle memory come into play in a high adrenaline situation? I know you've talked about how instinct would work against you, but what about moves you've practiced over and over but never applied to an actual combat or emergency situation? Well, muscle memory is actually different because that's you training your body to behave a certain way and react a certain way when faced with certain patterns. A lot of combat comes down to patterns. So your muscle memory would actually help you a lot more than your instinct because your instinct is just you going, oh my gosh, I'm in danger. I do something. Uh, Whereas your muscle memory is you going, oh, I recognize that. I see that thing. And your body reacts accordingly, which is why we train. So I haven't trained for a very long time, and yet when Stark throws his hand towards my face, my hand will automatically rise in response because to block it and even sometimes catch it or even swat it away, simply because I trained for so long, for nearly 14 years, doing stuff like that. So my body will automatically respond um, because it's trained to do that, and it will remember that it was trained to do that and behaves accordingly. So, what a lot of people actually rely on when they're fighting is their muscle memory. It's because they've trained their body to behave that way, and then they choose how they're going to respond, and that frees up their brain to really start to think about the situation and start thinking about how they're going to get out of the situation as opposed to just responding and reacting. The major problem with instinct specifically is that it's just you reacting. That's all it is. It's just a reaction. It's there's no higher cognitive processes, no higher thought. It's just you doing what your body does or has decided to do naturally according to its own instincts. Which again, if you're fighting somebody who is looking at you, processing information about you, trying to analyze your weaknesses, find the holes in your defenses and penetrate those, simple reaction isn't going to help you that much.
Yeah, there's actually another thing here that it gets mistaken by some people. The problem with instinct is not that you respond quickly. And this is what a lot of people respond. They say, "Well, no, this is the immediate response. It's right there. It makes me feel great." Um, the problem with instinct is that it's predictable. And a lot of times in training, what you're basically trying to do is take somebody's instincts and then replace those responses. So they're still going to respond instinctively is probably the best way to describe it, at least at surface level, but those will be appropriate responses to the situation they're in rather than whatever their natural response would be. So, especially when you get into things like military training, you're actually overriding someone's base instincts for what to do when someone reacts to it this way. And that's where you get into this thing where when you're talking about muscle memory, you're already starting to override someone's base instincts on how to respond to this stimuli. It's not.
Uh,
I'm
and
sorry.
there's always a chance that it won't work.
Yeah,
If you've never been in the situation before, there are a lot of other factors like fear, adrenaline, and never having handled those sorts of things before. So there's a chance that all your training will be for nothing. But that you have the training itself gives you a better chance than someone who has nothing at all. It's a hard thing to say because it's like, is there a way for there to be 100% accuracy? And the answer is no. Because so much is dependent on how well people respond to a crisis situation, how well you respond to a crisis situation, how well your body does what you've taught it to do, and how well you can follow through on those instincts. Even if you've been trained with your muscle memory to punch somebody, if you really don't want to, you won't. Your arm will go out like halfway and then it'll reach it and it'll stop like seconds before their face because you're scared of either hurting them, hurting you, or you're afraid that you can't do it part of the reason why confidence is so important also in these situations is you have to believe in yourself that you can do it, or else you won't. It's expecting somebody else or some other part of you to carry you forward is part of the problem, because in the situation you're only reliant on yourself and your brain will screw with your body's responses. So training in a safe environment and then suddenly being thrust into an environment where you are scared, in a stressful situation, worried for your life, terrified, it changes everything. And how you respond, it could be that your training will carry you through because you believe in yourself, you have confidence in your abilities, you're ready to go, and you're willing to hurt someone else. And you're willing to get into that mental state before them where you're willing to hurt them. But if you're not willing to hurt them, well, then your brain will stop your body from actually doing what it's been trained to do.
Also worth pointing out, when you're in a high adrenaline situation, like actually in that moment, if you've got the muscle memory down and you're willing to just follow through on the muscle memory, yeah, you'll be able to follow through on the strike. Like I said, it's sort of like recoding instincts, but at that point, it's just you understand you've executed this maneuver repeatedly, this move repeatedly, and you can just follow through and use it on somebody. And in some cases, actually, with that, it can get kind of hard to stop. You'll have the appropriate response, you'll start to go into it, and then you actually try to arrest it and prevent yourself from following through because you don't want to cripple somebody, you don't want to simply kill your opponent. For somebody who's trained in practical combat, it can be really nerve wracking and really horrifying when you're just ready to roll right through and do horrible things to somebody and then have to yank yourself back. It's a very unpleasant feeling.
And then there's the other side of this for the martial artists, where a lot of schools, one of the major flaws in conventional recreational martial arts training is that you spend a lot of time practicing not hitting people. You throw your punch, but you'll stop like just before you get your hit their face, so you never practice the full extension into hitting them. Um, I can't show you, even though my body is doing it right now. You know, you never have the full extension. If you don't practice the full extension of hitting somebody else, your body will not hit somebody else. And this happens to a lot of martial artists when they end up in combat situations where their body will do what it's been trained to do. And even when they have the confidence to try to do it, their hand still stops just before they get to their face. Because again, they've trained their body to do that. And it's really weird. I never actually thought about it until I was training with my brother's ninjutsu master, and he was talking about it with where that flaw actually comes in into someone's training style. Where and why for ninjutsu they actually practice aiming either past the face, so you go straight out, or pointing the hand at the face, so you can practice your full extension, so that when you want to hit the face, you don't either miss it or you go straight into it rather than stopping right before you get there.
Okay, that about covers it. I'm going to grab, oh yeah, there we go. I'm going to grab Roberto Valladovinas. I just mispronounced that, I'm sorry. But I'm going to grab Roberto's question since I'm going to try to take these in roughly the order they came in. And that one is, it's back up there. This was a scene request. Uh, A hits B with a battle axe on his abdominal area, but A hits flat of the blade, not the edge. I hope I'm making myself clear. Yeah, you are. What would the outcome be considering B only has a shirt? Thank you. Uh,
Ouch.
yeah, that's going to hurt. It's not going to be fatal, but it's going to be unpleasant. Um,
Well, I don't even want to know how big the battle axe is, and if he bends over, because when you hit your someone in the stomach, all the air actually goes out of their stomach up out your mouth. So they bend over automatically, so he might actually get cut anywhere.
Yeah. Um, yeah, you might get some surface lacerations depending on the axe. Like I'm thinking of a fire axe here, and if you get a full connection on that on the flat of the blade, you'll still actually you could still get some minor cuts. It'd probably be stopped by the shirt, but the shirt can be slightly torn or slightly worn anyway.
It
By the moment
depends.
it does.
It really depends. Sometimes they go and they just. It depends on how hard you hit them. It's gonna hurt.
Now, to be fair, with most axes, the way the handles are designed, it's a little bit hard to actually follow through properly on a strike using the flat of the blade. These are designed to be struck sort of in line, so the grip itself will tend to be oval. Again, I'm thinking of fire axes and wood axes and other things like that. It's very rare that you'll actually get a spherical handle. If your battle axe has that, has one, or it's not spherical, it's spherical, cylindrical, sorry, then a connection to but across the side wouldn't be any harder. But if this is actually an axe that started out again for dealing with wood or dealing with fire, then it's going to be kind of hard to swing it sideways.
Mm. Yeah, they're not designed for that. If you hit them with a bat, that would be really bad.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Then that's the other thing is at that point you're asking how much damage we get from the just the kinetic transfer from the contact. Uh, Depending on the size of the axe, there's more space for that to be distributed. Smaller the axe, the more force is actually delivered to a smaller area, the more injury, the more likely you're actually going to tear the skin, tear the tear the shirt, then tear the skin. I think that about covers it.
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
Does that help, Roberto?
let's see. Let's have the lightsabers question here. I do see Christina's response on the trampoline thing. Actually, I'm going to grab that for a second because let's get that one out really quickly because that is one of these. This is one of these things. Practice rolling out of a fall on my trampoline at home last week and tripped while running down a hill and instinctively did a roll and jumped straight up, no problem, nothing hurt. Yeah, that's first of all, when you're doing something like that, when you're falling and then recovering from it, that's something that your body's already cued to do, and the trampoline's certainly going to help you with that. So it's certainly something you can learn to do it, and that will become your instinctive response. Is to just just follow through on what you've known. You've done this before, you've experienced it before. Just right in, right out, and you're fine.
Well, and that's the other thing that I think a lot of people forget about instincts because they think it's just a thing you naturally know how to do. But a lot of your instincts are actually learned behaviors um, that you get from doing or learning or seeing or practicing similar things over time. And then your body just naturally does that because it's become part of your natural behavior package.
Yeah,
Okay, so we want to do lightsabers because Star Wars.
yeah. I'll bump that one up. And Victory Rose, I do see your question. Get to that. We have actually discussed lightsabers a couple of times. The tag list on the right side of the main website only shows if I think there are 6 or more entries with that keyword. I know we've done lightsabers a couple of times, so it is there on the blog, but that's no reason not to cover it now.
All right, I'll read Alan's question. Lightsabers. Have you discussed them? Yes, kind of. What are the basics to keep in mind when starting to plan a lightsaber fight? Lasers. They cut through everything. Um, one of the whether this is actually part of the Star Wars universe or not, one of the things to keep in mind about lightsabers is that only force sensitives are supposed to be able to wield them, particularly only force sensitives with training, because the lightsaber itself is so sensitive and requires such careful handling that you need to actually be precognitive, have a precognitive sense of where it's going to go and see the future, essentially, to actually be able to hit and strike with accuracy without risk of harming yourself. So what you actually see with Jedi, especially in the prequels, particularly where they're doing those super fast lightsaber battles. That's their deep connection with the Force that's allowing them to let the Force guide the blade where it's going to go and simply follow that path that the Force decides for them, I guess, allowing them to have reaction times that are much faster than the average human being, including being able to block blaster bolts and other lightsabers. And also that they are specifically in harmony or in tune with that other outside spiritual energy. And it's a, in a way, it's a form of meditation. I would actually put that as, which probably sounds weird if you've never actually thought about moving meditation, um, where it's the simple calmness. They're inside their own mind and they're allowing themselves to simply react to the world around them um, through being able to see what's coming, even when they don't know specifically what is, and to trust in a force outside of themselves, which gets forgotten about with lightsabers a lot, I think, um, because they're such a dangerous weapon for Star Wars, even in Star Wars continuity.
Not even in general.
Yeah,
Again, it's a weapon that'll go through anything and with almost no resistance, including your opponent and yourself. And when you start swinging these at each other and bouncing them off one another, the risks of you taking off a couple of your own limbs along the way just go sky high.
that is the. I think that's the major critique about the new Star Wars film, and it's spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. I'm sorry. With Kylo Ren and Rey's fight, which is that you're supposed to have some kind of training before you use the Force. Um,
Yeah, I think Victory Rose is right. Also, believe the lightsabers, at least in the first films, the original trilogy, were based off kendo. I'm not 100% certain, and a lot of that was also being pulled just from conventional European fencing.
well, Lucas actually, if you want to actually understand the Force, Lucas pulls heavily from uh, the
Taoism.
Taoism specifically for the Force. Um, the thing that's awkward about kendo in the original trilogies, my tongue, is that it wasn't actually being performed by anyone who practiced kendo. It was done by fencers. Um,
I'm looking up his name.
Bob Anderson.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah,
Uh,
Bob Anderson.
by Bob Anderson, who is a fantastic choreographer and was a fantastic choreographer and still is because his films are still out there. But he primarily did European fencing, so there's stuff that is kendo but is not quite true to kendo. Um, when you're looking at the Force, though, the philosophy behind it tends to come specifically from Chinese and from the Tao. The concept of all life being connected and intertwined. So, what might help you more is looking at
Looking at Taoism.
Taoism and uh, Shaolin. Um, Star Wars is like hack and slash martial arts stuff. Yoda makes a lot of sense though. He does. He does. Um, that was the one thing I remembered when I was a little kid watching Star Wars was that Yoda always made sense to me because he would say similar things to what my martial arts masters would actually say. And one of the most interesting things I think about Star Wars was that Lucas originally intended it for be that anyone could be force sensitive. That it was a skill that was developed through training, uh, much like it is in
The
where it
Rebel
was
Alert.
in martial arts, yeah, where the Force and the Jedi are actually very closely tied to martial arts, specifically Chinese martial arts, more than I would say Japanese martial arts, even though they used kendo for the lightsaber fight scenes. In outlook and perspective, of you're looking for your Shaolin monks in just how they behave towards the world, and that actually might be very helpful for you when trying to think about uh, Jedi, the Sith, and lightsabers in general. Which sounds weird, I know. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to think of anything else that's floating through here. It, I think that's the major chunk for
Feel the
lightsaber.
force flowing through you.
It is worth paying attention though, with Star Wars, to take a look at Taoism, get at least a peripheral understanding of that philosophy, to understand where this is coming from. And the other
Well,
thing
it's
is,
enlightenment. It's the idea of it's transhumanism. It's the idea of transcending yourself to a greater understanding of the world around you, whether that's through your anger, your rage, your fear, or through, well, harmony and letting go. I think one of the things that really always bugged me about the Jedi, which is weird, I was thinking about this earlier today, where they get treated with the Jedi, it's having a focus on a higher calling, on an ideal. The reason I would guess why the Jedi don't usually allow something like marriage would be the idea that it would interfere specifically. Uh, it would interfere specifically with their ability to be impartial, or their ability to follow the right course, to make the choices that are necessary, to make necessary choices in the pursuit of that higher calling, as opposed to being bound down where they would to choose their own, for their own personal gain, or their own emotions, their own desires. If they had children, do you sacrifice your child is on a transport, the smugglers have, or the pirates have stolen them, and they're trying to hold the entirety of someone else hostage, and are saying to the Jedi, trying to blackmail the Jedi into getting what they want, what do you do? And the same scenario actually occurs for the Jedi just in general. Like you'll see similar stuff happen in the Clone Wars, where they try to play off those feelings, those emotions, to make them do what they want. And that it the idea that it gets in the way, and how you feel about that is probably worth thinking about in regards to your own feelings. Which, I'm sorry, this is getting away from like lightsaber battles, but it actually all comes back together, I think, because how your perspective on a character's perspective on how they see the world around them, how they behave, their views towards violence actually heavily influences how they fight. And when they choose to engage in violence, how they choose to engage in violence, what to remember. And the question is your character the kind that just pulls their saber out at the first provocation and jumps with the great force jump right into combat with no question of what is going on around them? Or do they stop? Do they look at the situation? Do they try to figure out what's going on? And that's a really important question when you're actually thinking about lightsabers, or lightsabers versus blasters, or lightsabers versus what have you. Because when you're looking at somebody who wields a lightsaber, they're very, it's unlikely that they're actually going to be in a situation against the average person where they're outmatched. Even with numbers, there's plenty of examples where that doesn't actually mean much for a Jedi, or a Sith, really. Definitely not for a Sith, where they use the Force to create a higher understanding that allows them to do more and above and beyond what the average person is capable of. And so that question of responsibility also comes in of what do you do when you have this much power and those people have that much power? Do you go with what you see first? Do you question? Do you think? Do you try to suss out the situation? Um, do you allow your impartiality to be uh, compromised by your emotions? It's an interesting question. Anyway, yeah, I would actually also watch. Yeah, go back and watch the Kurosawa films. Specifically, how he handles the samurai. Yes, Hidden Fortress. Yojimbo's exceptionally good, especially if you want to look at somebody who is using people's perceptions of who they are to manipulate them into killing each other, basically, which is very clever. Well, we're coming up on 4 o'clock, so okay. Well, when Stark took me shooting, uh, way back when, because I have like really teeny hands. My hands are teeny tiny. Um, I had a lot of trouble with a fair number of the more common guns because of the size. It wasn't so much that I had any problem actually firing the gun or firing the gun or handling the gun. Um, some problems loading the gun simply because of the spring for the bullets, but that wasn't so much gender as I have weak hands. Uh, Glocks were very uncomfortable. I think the USP was very comfortable to shoot. So it's more of a question of your character, regardless of their gender, finding a weapon that feels good for them. It feels good in their hands, feels good when they fire it. That
Yeah, it
you know
is. Sorry, that's my bad.
fits
Somebody was saying my
them.
microphone's turned off. It is. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's a matter of feeling a weapon that feels good in your hands rather than and feels comfortable with, which is true for all weapons actually, is finding a weapon that feels good and you feel comfortable with and you feel like you can use rather than assigning, gender problems to it because really a weapon doesn't care. The weapon does not care. Um, it sounds weird, but because we think so much where everything gets split into men and women, and I actually don't think about men and women ever. Um, or the differences between me and a man, or the differences between me, or I look at people as when I'm thinking about or sizing them up or shaking them down, I think about them in terms of opponents, of how tall they are, what their personality is, what their body language is showing, how much training they have, but I don't really think about it in terms of, oh my gosh, that's a guy, I can't do anything about that because he has so many advantages over me. Ultimately, it's defeatist thinking. So if you have a character who picks up a gun and starts practicing with a gun, if they're thinking, oh, well, I can't use this gun because this is for boys, that's probably the wrong way to go about it. I can't use this gun because this gun feels uncomfortable to me. Which, is the same for Stark. Stark has guns that feel uncomfortable for him to use or fire. Um, and so it's a matter of them thinking, oh, well, this is uncomfortable for me, rather than, oh, no, I'm a girl.
Yeah, it's actually kind of. I think it was Smith and Wesson actually tried selling pink guns that did not go anywhere. It's not that women aren't buying guns. It's that they weren't buying pink ones because
Well, you occasionally, like, when you're gonna, if you're a woman buying a pink gun, it's because you want to emphasize your femininity. But not every woman who buys guns wants to emphasize her femininity. Not every woman who buys guns wants to be feminine. And most women don't buy guns they, because of, they need to show off their femininity. They mostly buy guns because it's practical and a useful method of self defense.
though I think we can all say those Hello Kitty assault rifles are hilarious.
Or they like them. Some women just like guns.
Actually, also the first thing worth pointing out with a lot of firearms, they're designed with a very large range of hand sizes in mind. The line from Lord of War about AK-47s are so simple that a child can use them, and they do. Yeah, they will function in for somebody who's got much smaller hands than usual. And so, yeah, so you take something like an AK-47 or an AK-74, and you put that in the hands of a member of either sex, they're going to be able to use the gun. It's it's not really a limitation. It might not be as comfortable for someone based on any number of factors. I have a hard time with the Walther P99 simply because of the way the backstrap's designed. It's uncomfortable for me even though it's a full frame pistol. My hand's large enough to operate it rather reasonably. It's just the way it's designed cuts into the back of my hand. The same thing with what is it? I think it's the Sig P230, P32, where I've got it's an awkward grip for me. But no, there isn't really a limitation regarding gender in firearms or sex in firearms either way.
A lot of people say there's limitations regarding gender and martial arts, but eh, it's more like different body types do different things. Honestly, uh, it's not the whole men versus women thing is just a more of a in your mind problem than it is actuality because ultimately your body will do what it does, their body will do what it does, and you learn to overcome that and you learn to work with that, and ultimately that's all you can do. It Defeatist thinking would be saying, oh well, he's a man so I can't defeat him, even if he's a man that's 225 pounds or 200 pounds or 300 pounds. Saying he's a man, I can't defeat that, or I can't go after that it's sort of like, well, you probably could. You're just thinking about it the wrong way. You have to think about where their strengths, what their strengths are, and avoid those. Where there's what their weaknesses are, and exploit those, and then try to put that all together and hope you know how to do that. Which is the other question. Is there's a lot to it that involves critically thinking and figuring stuff out, um, rather than I can just do it.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, we've got one other kind of want to just sort of get through quickly. I think I said I noticed I saw it earlier, but I didn't respond to it, so I'm going to pop that one up to the top. Um, from Victory Rose, I have a story relating to instinct thing. I was riding a horse, spooked. She did a 180 right next to a fence. The saddle slipped. I didn't have time to think as I fell. My arm wrapped around the fence rail. I landed in the dirt. That's reflexes. Um, that's just straight up. That's reflexes. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say on that subject, but
I all I'd have was its reflexes. The question of how did she fall? Um, Wrapping your arm around the fence as your body's still going down, it can't stop depending on how far you fall. Because I've fallen off of horses before. It hurts a lot. Um, so your arm wrapped around the fence as you fell. So your body keeps going down. Your arm has now stopped moving. That's gonna hurt because your body keeps going. And then you hit the dirt, which means you've stopped. So one part where you hit the ground probably didn't break anything. Uh, Probably didn't break anything, and probably hopefully didn't tear anything. But she's gonna be sort of like achy, very achy for a while. Um, Simply because the stop, but the arm stopped moving, the body kept going, and then they hit the dirt. So the arm that grabbed the rail is going to ultimately, I think, is probably going to hurt more. But it depends on how far
well,
the distance was.
it is one of these things where if you're reacting, like you're just working off straight reaction and grabbing it, you're going to be better off than if you just go straight to the ground because less of you on the ground to get caught by the horse if it's still in the general vicinity freaking out.
Mm, that's true too.
So
Like, where did the horse go?
yeah, but that's actually reflex. It's not instinct so much as you're responding to a situation that's changing quickly and you just respond as fast as you can. I don't think I'd categorize it as instinct, but it's good that you got out of that mostly unscathed.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's everything, unless anybody's got one last question to go before we cut. Okay, so it's been a blast. We're going to do these again. I'm not sure exactly when, and we will be running another one of these for Patreon subscribers in sometime in the near future. We'll schedule that.
I think
And
we said we're going to do it next Sunday.
yeah, probably. So we'll set that up, and if you're one of the Patreon subscribers at the $5 tier or higher, we'll put you'll be able to see it on the following list on Patreon. So there's a subscriber set there that you can see. But other than that, it's been a blast, and we will be doing this again in the near future. We'll also probably be doing more of these live that are open to everybody in the near future, though. We'll try to make sure that those are scheduled a little bit further in advance than they were today, so it's easier on everybody else, and so you know it's coming rather than just 24 hours notice.
All right. I hope you guys had fun. We had fun too.
See ya.